G'day Bomber fans, we have a massive game coming up. MCG Saturday night, a top 8 clash. Essendon up against Melbourne, one side trying to climb and be a chance for finals, the other trying to cement their spot in the top 4, but funnily enough the roles are reversed this time around. We're the team higher up the ladder. This is a huge game for us. We have a real chance to prove ourselves against a proper side again. If we win, we could mean business. If we lose, there will still be some question marks hovering. Huge game, which means it's a huge preview, but first some votes to get through. Alrighty, some votes. Merritt is the clear standout, 6 votes from the game. Mackay picked up 3, Caldwell picked up 2, Draper got the 1, and there were a couple of role players in Jones and Shield. I think that was the most votes I've ever had to count, by the way, so good job, guys. Only a handful of players didn't receive any votes. The overall tally, Merritt is back out to a big lead, Caldwell is 2nd, Durham is 3rd, Ben Mackay has moved up into 4th place, and from there it's a logjam. Only 3 votes separate 5th from 10th, and outside the top 10 there are even more players. Keep up the votes. Alrighty, Saturday night, MCG, might be a bit of rain, who knows with Melbourne weather. That's the thing I've noticed about making the regular trips over this year. There isn't much point looking at the radar for the weekend. It's a Melbourne home game, so there are set to be plenty of seats available. Fill out that crowd, make it an Essendon home game if you have nothing better to do for the night. We're in the top 4, Melbourne are just outside the top 8, roles reversed on recent years. We won our game against them last year at Gather Round, but lost the previous 3 before that. Both teams have won 2 of their last 3, but you get the feeling Essendon are the team in better touch right now. Much has been made of Melbourne this year and the disappointing season they're having. It's why we're going into the match as favourites. I actually can't remember the last time we would have gone into the match as favourites. It's rarely the case with this matchup. It's a tough one to pick. Both teams on their day can turn it on. Both teams have shown they can also imitate witches' hats pretty well too. This is going to be a fascinating game of footy between 2 very different teams, so let's talk about it. What should we expect from our opponents on Saturday night? Well, the Demons are a very different team to how they were in 2023 and years before that. I mean, no disrespect to them and their fans, but they're no longer a feared side of the comp. And now that doesn't mean they can't turn it on out of nowhere. They definitely can, but we're seeing it less and less. The gap there used to be between these 2 teams is all but gone. As I said, we're going in as favourites. The Demons not only have injuries to key players, but they have others just not getting the job done right now either. As a team, they're not playing at their best, and they would 100% agree. They're out of form. This time last year, they had a percentage of 127. Right now, it sits below triple figures like us. They've become a much easier team to score against. They have lost that power out of the midfield. It used to be hard to find ways to beat this team, but now there is a clear blueprint, and there is one that could play into our hands a bit. I'm not overly confident. I still think the Demons, at their best, are a great side, one that could easily beat us. I'm going to go zone by zone, though, today, just because this could well come down to which zones hold up the best. It could be close in a few areas. I'm expecting a very structured and strategic game of footy. Let's start with the midfield. Melbourne's is a little off right now. The loss of P.O.T.Y is massive. He's a star of the comp. He's irreplaceable, and Clayton Oliver is just not playing like the Clayton Oliver that used to bully us. It's a different looking Melbourne midfield to what we've grown used to. Christian Salem has been thrown in there from defence to try and give them more drive. Trent Rivers has also moved higher up the field to good effect. He looks like a terrific player in their engine room, but the Ds are not getting the job done there. It's an inconsistent midfield group that is heavily reliant on ruckman Max Gawn, who is not playing. I'll talk about that later. Last year, the Ds had the 4th best clearance differential in the competition. This year, it's down the other end, closer to the bottom 4. But that isn't the issue with Melbourne right now. They're still scoring from stoppages. The issue is their scoring from turnover has dropped right off from last year, making them a far less dangerous team in different areas. I'll talk about that in a bit more. But it's important to note now because it means they are more reliant on the midfield to generate scores. Without counting the West Coast game, because that was against an effortless opponent, the Ds have been in the bottom 6 teams for scores from turnover in the last 4 matches. In that time, they've played some leaky teams like North as well. So really, if it's going to go like it has all year, Melbourne will be relying on their midfield to score, and that makes the midfield battle a really intriguing one because neither team has really generated much from there recently. The Collingwood game was brilliant, but away from that, it's fallen off in recent weeks for us. Both sides are off the back of strong midfield performances, so morale should be high in there and confidence should be a factor. The question is, what side will make the most from their chances in the guts? There are some big questions. Will the Demons try and keep Merritt out of the game? Will they tag him? How will Melbourne cope with that Max Gawn? Will Clayton Oliver be able to return to form just in time for a finals push? It should realistically be a tick to the Bombers here in this zone. Our midfield has shown more this year, but the Ds will be hungry to prove themselves, and this is where the game really starts. If we can shut them down here and make it hard for them to generate dangerous territory, we should have the upper hand. Melbourne's forward line has never really been their strength. They never had that game-breaking key forward that can put teams to bed. They're a team that very much relies on creating space inside 50 for one-on-one contests and giving smaller targets like Kasai Pickett and Bailey Fritsch room to beat their opponents on ground level. Van Rooyen is a great marking target, but not exactly a Coleman threat. The Demons are actually in the bottom third of the comp for points scored. It comes from the fact that their defensive transition has dropped right off, because that used to be a real danger. It was the way they found space higher up the field, and now teams have found it easier to enclose the ground and force them into turnovers. This shouldn't be a high-scoring game of footy on either side. There is every chance this could turn into a proper grind of a match. I expect goals to be hard to come by, and neither team has really proven themselves as heavy scorers this year, at least not against good opponents. Melbourne haven't managed to hit triple figures against a top 8 team in 2024, and Essendon have only managed it once at the SCG in a 30-point loss, which was just a shootout of a game. This game is not going to be one up forward, but it means taking chances really matters. Goal scoring opportunities are going to be harder to come by, so whoever makes the most of them will undoubtedly see themselves up as the more likely team to take home the 4 points. The backlines are going to be really interesting. As I said, Melbourne don't really line up with that game-breaking key forward. It could bring Mackay into the game, as we saw against the Pies, who actually line up in a very similar way to the Demons in some ways. That's a danger for them. It frees up Ridley to roam as well, like he did against Collingwood and Richmond. Essendon benefit from the lack of dangerous forwards, opposition forwards. If we can defend the ground and defend transition, we probably should win the game, because our back six is solid enough to contain the Melbourne forwards. As for their defence, it's a bloody tough one to get on top of. May and Lever together are just a deadly combo. It's deflating watching them at their best. They can really tear games apart in the air, and that's where their transition used to start, from intercepting. They may have dropped off in intercept possessions from last year, but they still average more than us and are right up there in the stat line for the comp. This makes our key forwards extremely important, most notably P.O.T.Y. He doesn't need 20 contested marks and 10 goals to have a big game. Wright just needs to keep their key defenders quiet. He needs to stay accountable. They're dual All-Australians, May and Lever. If they're impacting in the air, it means they're playing the game they want to. If Wright and co don't allow them to, it's just another tick for us winning the game. Alright, so how do we go about winning this game? As I said, it's set to be very structurally minded. The Collingwood game was at times ping-pong. It was chaos. They inject chaos, Collingwood. It's a lot harder to read playing Collingwood. It's hard to defend at times. Melbourne are a well-drilled machine. This might not be as entertaining as Friday night. In the end, I think it's going to come down to efficiency. Which team makes the most of possessions they get? It's going to come down to the backlines holding up, which I expect both to do. I don't think either team should find it easy to score, which then makes taking opportunities as crucial as it's been all year. The team who wins the midfield battle as well is going to be the team who gets the upper hand. Territory is going to be important, especially if the weather is a bit wet and slippery. This is a night for role players. I talked about Merritt and Gawn being important, because obviously they are, but it's nights like these where you find your Matt Guelphy or Jake Melksham can really have a big say. There's a lot to dissect with this matchup. It's honestly a really intriguing one. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a tense game, I reckon, built around moments. It wouldn't surprise me if we see periods of the game where the sides are just feeling each other out, trying to gauge how to play. There's going to be shifts in tone, shifts in momentum. I'm pretty excited to see how we handle it. Alright, team news. There's a lot to talk about here, starting with us because there is less to go on about. Goldstein and Heppel will be fit. They were managed last week, but it doesn't mean they come back into the side. Without Gawn, the need for 2 rucks decreases, so we may line up with just Draper again, especially after how good Caddy looked against Collingwood. I think Goldstein has to come in back into the team for when we play teams like St Kilda and Rowan Marshall, but against a Gawnless Melbourne, we surely just stick with what we have up forward, so Wright can pinch it in the ruck. Heppel should come back in, and I would assume it would be in place of the sub Nick Hind or maybe wingman Nick Cox, now that we have Harry Jones playing a similar role. Maybe Archie Perkins is given a rest, I doubt it though. Melbourne have a lot to think about. Max Gawn is injured. Their next best option is Tom Fullerton. Do they bring in Fullerton with support from Ben Brown, who could be fit, or will they opt to just bring Harrison Petty instead after his hamstring tightness? It's tough to say. Melbourne without Gawn though, that's huge. The dip in quality from Gawn to Fullerton, especially without Petrarca. Correct me if I'm wrong, I had a little look, but the last time Melbourne played without these two was back in 2017, I think. They're missing their 2 most important players from the lineup. So let's look at what that means. Who will win this game? Prediction time. As I said, Melbourne are not the threat they once were, but there is still a good side in there. Many claimed it was season over, but they have won 2 of their last 3. Their only loss being a thriller at the Gabba. They dismantled the Eagles, who we've struggled to beat convincingly a few times. They love playing on that wide MCG. You'd be silly to think we're a given to win this game. That is what is so dangerous about it. We are going in as favourites like we did against the Cats. There is room for a repeat of that. But after that Collingwood win, I'm pretty confident we're a club that can progress this year. That win would not mean much if we can't follow it up the week after in a match we're going in as favourites for. We've proven that we can win the big games. Now we just have to prove we can follow up those big games and not waver. This is a must-win for the Bombers. If we get the job done, the lid would loosen. I'm not going to say it's off yet. I'm picking us to win by 15 points. I'll tell you what though, I'm very nervous going into this game. I feel like there is a lot riding on this one. We really have to beat the D's without Gordon Petrarca. If we don't, I think it'll be a very critical round 18 review. That is that review done. Let me know what you think down below. Are you confident? Are you a bit more reserved like I am? Get out to the game if you can. Support the boys. Wave those scarves. Like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, go Bombers.